I must say, it's very lovely to be sitting in this room. I never sat in this room. This was the parlour and was quite off limits. Auntie Winnie would come to the front door, meet me with a lovely smile. She had a beautiful smile and big twinkly blue eyes, white curled hair. And then we would go down the hallway to the back, to the kitchen. If anybody's at all interested in history, it's fascinating to meet a person who is representative of an era which is no longer there. And she was that in many ways, and possibly because she lived in this house, it was underlined. And of course the house, when you stepped inside it, was like walking into a museum. She was the only daughter of Clara and Donald Turner, their youngest child, never married, and I have sort of thought about why that was in some ways, but I think in that era there was a generation of women who, probably because of the First World War, never had a husband. In Winnie's case, I don't think she was pining for one. She'd been from early life very keen on sport. She was a Wellington A-grade rep hockey player, and there's a lovely photo of a team in which she's the captain. She loved golf, which she had taken up a bit later, maybe in her 20s. She played golf from at Miramar very often. In terms of sort of indoor hobbies, she loved cards, playing cards, and she was a very good bridge player. She belonged to the bridge club and she played a lot of bridge. I should underline the fact that she was a very private person. So when the cottage was turned into a museum, and that's another whole story, on the opening day, she did not wish to appear and be the one to cut the ribbon to open it with Mayor Michael Fowler, was the mayor at the time. She delegated that task to my mother, and Winnie sat in the mayor's car parked outside on Nairn Street. Nobody could budge her, you know. Everybody would have been saying, go on, you should do this, you know, you're the last person resident in the house and you're the representative of the Wallace family, all that kind of thing. She didn't want to do it. It was not going to happen. She was born in 1898, and her grandparents, William and Catherine Wallace, well, in the case of William Wallace, he died in 1911, and I think Catherine died in 1909. So there would have been rather hazy memories, especially as until 1911, she lived with her parents, both her parents and her siblings, over in a house on Mount Vic. They didn't live here. They didn't come back to this house until her parents' marriage broke up and her mother returned to this original family home, the parents having built a bigger house next door and living there. But she would have, I think, in terms of the visits that naturally took place between all members of the family, and with this Nairn Street as the focus of it, she would have remembered them. I regret now the many things I never asked her about. The way she spoke, you know, her manner of speaking was very well modulated and very, no slang, no catchy phrases, no, I mean, even just her presentation, I think I've mentioned in my note there, she certainly never wore trousers. Her dress was always the dress of a middle class, you know, lady, let's say. Sober, serious kind of dress and neat and tidy presentation. The setting was one of the things that placed her in time, and not many people were living in a house as old and as unrenovated as this house was. I think she was a very independent, self-willed person. She knew what she liked. I think a phrase that you would come to mind with Winnie was, she didn't suffer fools gladly. And in her mind, most of the fools that she knew or encountered were men, and she would say so. They came out from England, a place called Royston, which is in relatively southern England, and William had been in the, he was a builder or carpenter, and as such he had been with the British forces that had been in Crimea during that big war, the Crimean War. He was there as a builder, building barracks and accommodation for troops in Crimea before marrying, so as a young man. And then he'd gone back to England, and he and Catherine met and came here very soon after marrying. They arrived in 1858, so I guess they met about 1857, something like that. Somewhere in the house property here is the toolbox that William brought his tools with, because that was his means of making a living in a new country. And their first child was born about that time. The family grew in Victorian style quite rapidly. He became quite prosperous in Wellington. It was a big development era for builders, and he had contracts round the town or even up in the Hutt Valley. Catherine's job was, according to the convention of the time, just home-based, but also not sitting around at all. She must have been very flat out, I guess, and one can see from artefacts and family kitchenware, that kind of thing. There was really not much in the way of labour-saving devices. That probably had what there was, but it was pretty hard physical work, especially if you were usually either expecting your next child. Some of the furniture was made by William Wallace, because he was something of a cabinet maker, not primarily a cabinet maker, but he could make furniture. And so there's a very nice chest of drawers in the bedroom there, which was made by him as a wedding gift for one of his daughters. And there's a much more basic Cowrie chest of drawers, which was always in the upstairs room, pretty much a set of drawers that he had knocked together to use in the boys' room. I think it is remarkable that there's some furniture here which has never belonged anywhere else. I'm not sure what year that actual church was built, so there could have been an earlier version of it in the days when Clara was a Sunday school teacher there. That would have been in the 1880s, I suppose, 1880s or 1890s, so she might have been about 17 or so when she was a Sunday school teacher. So that was very much their family church, and Winnie, in all my knowledge of her, was a regular churchgoer at that church into old age. And this was a Victorian thing. She could read teacups and she could read cards. In other words, she could tell fortunes. And she was there was no woojie or anything like that. She didn't put a shawl over anything, but we were sitting, I remember this so clearly when she was staying with us at Raumati after dinner one night. Let's have a card reading. And she read my cards, and I'm not going to actually go into it, it's private, but she read my cards and I didn't think anything about it. It was a bit alarming because I kept drawing the ace of spades, which wasn't good. But no, she had another interpretation on it, and I forgot all about it. And later in life, I realised that, it had actually been accurate, and very soon after, what she had said had happened, but I'd forgotten. I didn't rate it or register it. But that's always been a little bit of mystery about Auntie Winnie, that I thought, I think I missed something there. I think there was another dimension to her. I just wanted to put this up. I wanted to bring it today because I feel that it was probably an influence on Winnie. She was born in 1898. This book and the others were published 1904, or round about that time. So just after Queen Victoria had died, but still very much in the Victorian era. And I think it's just nice. I wanted to bring it back into the house, because this is a house that had actually, would have been read in by her. While we're sitting here, I'm looking at the hand-worked sampler, needleworked sampler, which is on the wall there, which was done by Clara at Clara Louisa Wallace, aged 13. Now that piece had been handed down to my mother's sister, whose second name is Clara. She's named for Clara. So she received that, and my cousin, who's a very dear friend of mine, whose second name is also Clara, had received it from her mother, and Kirsty Clara, my cousin, gifted it back to the house. And so I think it is really quite special to have pieces here which have continued to have a family life, if you like. They've continued to be a link to those people. And something as personal as that was actually stitched by Clara, and it must have been really painstaking hard work. It would have taken ages to do it. It's still in very good condition, and it was a standard thing for girls at that time to have to do, is here for people to see and to reflect on, you know, what's behind it and how does it belong here and what does it add to the place as a museum.